everybody. Today our featured book is The Revenge of Liam McGrew, a mystery crime novel that has won awards. It was a finalist in both the Beverly Hills International Book Competition and the Next Generation Indie Book of the Year. And we have today a very special guest. It's author Tom MacDonald. Award-winning Tom MacDonald has also garnered other awards for his two previous books, On the Bridge and The Charlestown Connection. It's wonderful to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Suzette. Thanks for having me.
I read your book, The Revenge of Liam McGrew. Loved it, fun. So it's set in Boston, and it was delightful to me to say, oh, that's Braintree. Oh, I know that street. It's been just such a treat to read your book. Now, tell us about The Revenge of Liam McGrew and why he's so ticked off.
Well, Liam McGrew showed up in my first book, The Charlestown Connection, and he just had a very small part in it. But people that read the book loved him because he was so aggressive and feisty and violent. And so I thought I'd resurrect him for this book. And he's extremely mad at the protagonist of the story, Dermot Sparhawk, because Dermot disrespected him when he was in Boston. Dermot was unaware that he was an IRA soldier, and so Liam never forgot it.
I see.
Hence the Revenge of Liam McGrew.
And, you know, speaking of your protagonist, Dermot Sparhawk, he's the one who's targeted to be murdered, his object of revenge. Tell us more about his character.
Well, Dermot is a Charlestown guy. He grew up in Charlestown. He is half Irish. His mother was from Ireland, Northern Ireland, and half Micmac Indian. And he was a football star at Boston College, won All-American, won awards, looked like he was going to go on to a great professional career, and he got injured in his last game, broke his knee, botched surgery, his career was over. So he's a guy that was kind of floundering in life, and a case came along. It wasn't really a case, but a situation came along, and someone asked him for help, and that's how we kind of get into detecting investigative work.
Yes, he's an investigative work,
Yeah.
and in your previous book, The Charlestown Connection, that's where he has his first encounter with Liam McGrew.
Yes.
Now, go on.
His godfather gets killed in the first book, and so it wasn't like Dermot decided to go into this field. It's just he said, I want to find out who killed my godfather, and that led him into the whole, the whole detective genre type of writing. Yeah.
Now, Dermot is targeted by Liam, and yet he gets dragged. You talk about how he gets dragged into all of this, kind of unsuspecting in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Dermot doesn't know what's going on. Liam McGrew doesn't really target him. He does so indirectly. He's on a rant about how he hates Sparhawk. He'd love to get even, but he's too sick to do it. He's back in Belfast, and his grandson is coming to Boston to pull a crime. And his grandson, who's something of a, a little bit of a loser, not too sharp, is going to try to impress his grandfather by whacking Dermot Sparhawk, and it backfires. So then Liam gets wild when his grandson gets murdered, not murdered, killed by Dermot in self-defense, and he just starts, he's on a rampage,
I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I will tell you that it was a very fun and exciting book. The twists and turns that you developed, in this kind of transatlantic mystery that spans from Belfast to Boston. Yeah. Now, how did you come to create that? Because in a lot of ways it's complex, but you portray it in such a simple, compelling way. And yet, your Belfast, the IRA connection, Boston crime scene. How did you develop all that?
Well, I thought, Dermot's life is at stake. And he wants to find out what's going on. He cobbles together enough clues to figure out something's going on in Belfast. And his thinking is, I'm going to go after it before it kills me. And so, fiction, who goes after the IRA in Belfast, you know. Yeah, so, but he does, because he figures it's my best chance to stay alive, is to confront it head on. So he ends up in Belfast and ends up confronting Liam McGrew.
Now, your character, Dermot Sparhawk, I found him very fascinating because he's half Irish, and as you say, his heritage also includes First Nation people, the Micmac, Native American people. How does that play into his character exactly? I mean, there are a lot of cultural references, but how does it play into his character and part in the book?
Well, one thing I didn't want to do was kind of have the stereotypical Irish townie, all right?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I work in Charlestown, and I've talked to a lot of people over there. And in the 50s, when the Tobin Bridge was being built, it was a lot of Micmac Indians were on the iron workers that built the bridge. And they'd come into Charlestown, you know, for lunch or after work. And so I thought that might be a nice combination of the whole Native American Irish thing. But really, I think what forms Dermot more than anything is he's a townie. Yes, he's half Irish, half Micmac Indian, but really what it is the Charlestown culture that forms him, you know, as a sense of toughness, loyalty, doing the right thing. And so, and maybe the Micmac and Irish part of it might translate into his physical, you know, his physical way of solving things, his warrior type nature that's just part of him. And he, you know, and he's able to use these, you know, talents in his work, and he used them very well in his football career that got cut short. So this is kind of a transfer of those physical skills that he can use.
I found it really fascinating how you were able to weave in the close-knit culture of Charlestown and Boston Irish, and at the same time you were also able to portray that same kind of clansmanship among the or clan type loyalty among the Micmac. It was, and yet it was very different, but you could really see that kind of dynamic in the whole kind of towny encounter and episodes. Now, in the book, you bring a terrific sense of place. I found it really delightful to read about Braintree, Dorchester, Charlestown, and say, oh, I've been there, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Now, as a writer, can you talk about the sense of importance of place that you brought to creating this book?
Yeah, I love reading books that have a sense of place, you know, whether it's New Orleans, New York, Los Angeles. And Boston is such a area just made for a setting and a story, any story, but a crime story especially, I think. So I you know, what I try to do is kind of capture the, Dermot operates at a much lower level, more like a street level, you know, talks to mailmen, waitresses, street corner guys, diner workers. That's kind of where his information comes from. So I try to kind of capture that undercurrent of connection in Boston, and how people know what's going on if you just ask the right questions.
How did you come to pick certain locales? Because your locations are as vivid as your characters.
Thanks.
And you know, Boston, Dorchester, and all these kind of places, Charlestown, are filled with really colorful areas. How did you pick them?
Well, some of it was I picked Cafe Bella in Randolph because a very dear friend of mine owns the place, a guy named Pat Barnes. I went to high school and college with him. I picked a Blarney Stone in Dorchester just because I like the place. I think it's a good setting for you know, for a waitress to work. And you know, all the Charlestown stuff, you know, along the Navy Yard and up by Monument Square, and especially in the projects. Another thing that's formed Dermot as a character is he grew up in the housing project, and so I thought that these all played into his value system, his, you know, what he thinks is important, and then how he acts on what he thinks is important in the story.
And before we go to break, I have to ask you this question. Dermot Sparhawk, one of the things I really love about your book is that everybody has a very interesting name. Liam, Alroy, Dermot, Sparhawk. Now, that is also the name of the publishing company, Sparhawk Publishing. And Dermot Sparhawk is the character. What is the significance of that name to you?
Well, I like the word. I like that, and I'll tell you how I got it. My wife, Mary Beth, is in the audience here, and she used to work over at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Brighton, and I'd pick her up after work, and I always went by this street called Sparhawk Street, and I thought, I like it as a name, and and I thought it could, say maybe an Indian name, And Dermot, I just wanted, where he's half Irish, half.
Yeah, that captured it.
It was that simple. I saw it on a street sign and liked it. Some of the other names I just, not make up, but just I see something I like and use it. Like Alroy just means redhead in Gaelic. So
I didn't know that.
So I thought, okay, that's the way I can keep the character straight in my head. He's a redhead Alroy. So Liam McGrew, I just, where it was Northern Ireland, the name McGrew was a little ambiguous as to Irish, Scottish. So I thought that would be a nice way, a nice name for someone that lives in Belfast. I forget some of the other names.
Well, I have to tell you, I do
I should remember them right.
Well, you do have 3 award-winning books. I do believe that crafting a name is a real gift.
Yeah.
Because it makes because in one name you have to really capture the essence of that character and make it compelling for the readers, and you do that so well. I'm really drawn to unusual names. And how long did it take you to write this novel?
It took kind of a long time. It took, once I got my hands around it, it took about 6 months, but this was a book that I started, I had the whole thing outlined, and I wrote it, and I gave Mary Beth, my wife, the manuscript. She read about 5 pages of it and said, this doesn't work, So I was, so I went back to the drawing board and just kind of flipped a few things around. And it was kind of the way I was telling it, not the bones of the story itself, So I just kind of, I really introduced the Irish thing at the beginning, and I thought that was a nice way to get the crime part of the story going, So I got that going, and then bring Dermot in about 50 pages into the story.
I see.
And I think it worked that way.
Oh, it's a wonderful flow. And shout out to your beautiful wife for doing such a terrific cover. I love the cover of the book, very Book of Kells, It just really captures that whole kind of Irish Native American artwork thing. Really lovely. Now we're going to go to break, and when we return, we're going to talk to Tom MacDonald about his process and more about the Revenge of Liam McGrew. So please stay tuned. Hi, it's Suzette Martinez Standring again on It's All Right with Suzette, and we're back with Tom MacDonald and his new book, The Revenge of Liam McGrew. I think that as an author, we all draw from our personal experiences. And I know that you now work in Charlestown for St. Mary St. Catherine of Siena Parish as Director of Social Ministries and Director of Harvest on Vine Food Pantry. It's a busy week for you.
Yeah, we I don't know when this is going to air, but we have a big Thanksgiving basket giveaway at the end of this week. We have 650 families signed up for it. And mostly we serve, my office is right in the middle of the Bunker Hill Housing Development, which is the largest federal housing development in New England. And there's over 1,100 families, and that's kind of who we serve in the pantry.
And that's very, very important work. And the reason why I bring up your career and your work, your social work in many ways, is because you say that your writing has been influenced by your work with the Catholic Church, serving the largest, as you say, federal housing project in New England, Charlestown's Bunker Hill housing development. Tell me how that has influenced your writing in this book.
Well, it kind of goes back. I went back to school at the University of Southern Maine, a program called the Stone Coast Writing Seminars. And I was lucky enough to have these great writers, professors, and I could submit work to them, and they'd kind of, give me feedback on it. And one of my, they call them mentors, one of my mentors said to me, where do you work? And I just said, Charlestown, run a food pantry. He said, write your story from that point of view. So I think it really got me started. It was a little bit different than the typical detective story, where this guy just he runs a food pantry, and then he gets drawn into a crime, and his nature comes out at that point. He's a bulldog. He's not gonna he's like a dog with a bone. He's not gonna stop until he finds out what happened. And so a lot of the characters in dialogue and even just words, I draw from that little section of Charlestown, and some of the characters, I would say combinations of people, into one character, and so that's that really was the start of the whole thing. Was just that little piece of advice, where do you work?
Now, you've written 3 award-winning mystery novels at this point. When you were beginning, and this is for the people who aspire to be Tom MacDonald someday, and I know that you've been favorably compared to Dennis Lehane and other great mystery writers. When you were beginning, what were your challenges?
Well, it was really learning the craft of writing a what I would call a hard-boiled detective novel, and part of that is keeping the action going, avoiding digressions. All the reader really, in the end, wants to know is what's going to happen next. What's going to happen next?
That's great advice.
Yeah, and if you start, and every book has its own. Certain things are expected in different genres, and a lot of books go into flashbacks, or they want digressions, how the character came to think the way he or she does. And I think in a mystery book or a detective book, it's a little bit more plot driven.
Yes.
Where you don't really care so much why does the character, you want to give them just enough to show why the character thinks a certain way, without going into, well, at 4 years old, he was toilet trained. 6 years old, he went to, in high school he played for, they don't care. The readers,
right.
And the only reason I know that is because I've fallen down that hole so many times. And, if you have a visual of a story arc, climbing, and then you start getting into biography of the character, it just starts to flatten out. And so I'm very lucky. Mary Beth is with me, my wife, and she's my first reader, and she catches, I call them digressions, she catches them almost before they get going, and I just take them out of the story, so that the story arc keeps climbing.
You're really fortunate to have Mary Beth as such a great editor, because I too am blessed with a great first reader, my husband David, and it's really helpful to have him say, to read a column and then to say to me, and your point was, you need it. You really need to stay on track.
And with a fictional story, it's what's the purpose of the scene? Why is the scene in here? And that almost tells you right there it doesn't need to be there. Or it needs to be punched up so that it's clear why it's in there. And that's about as good of level of support you can get, is that honesty.
That's so true.
And instead of someone saying, "Oh yeah, it's great," and that doesn't get you anywhere. You want that honest feedback.
That's where you improve.
And I get it. And with that, the even more support. with the whole process.
I think part of the writing process is also the ability to take constructive criticism and apply it. Because not everybody can take the good advice to kill some of your darlings.
Well, that's one of my credos. Kill your darlings, and like I'll write a paragraph or a scene, and I'll say, boy, this the best scene I've ever written, but it doesn't belong in the book.
Now, what about your personal writing process, Tom? Do you write best in the morning or late in the evening after everything's done? What is your writing process?
I just do it when I have time.
And when is that?
Yeah, well, throughout the day, weekends, evenings, but throughout the day I'll be writing stuff down on paper. Like ideas for scenes, ideas for dialogue.
The dialogue's very good.
Thank you.
It's just vivid and spare, and it just gets you where you want to go.
Yeah, thanks.
And there's just enough of it inserted into a great setting. I mean, I really found myself very engaged with the characters.
Thanks.
It went by like that. Now, speaking of going by like that, this show is almost at its close. But before we end, I really want to know, where can we buy your book or learn more about you?
Well, thanks. I have a web page, tommacdonaldbooks.com. The books are available on Amazon. I think they're available at Barnes & Noble. Yes, Mary Beth's nodding. In Milton, it's down at the Gift Garden.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, no, they're wonderful. All three of my books, they've been just wonderful to me. I've had book signings there. I'm sure I'll have one around Christmas time.
Well, I want to just interject, tommacdonaldbooks.com, and that's MacDonald.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, I made the mistake of thinking it was MC, but it's MAC.
Yeah.
Yes.
Grandfather was from Glasgow, so there you go.
Oh.
The MAC.
I see. Now, before we end, I'm really curious. You wrote your first book, On the Bridge, and then now you're on this is your third book. What is the time? How long did it take you to do your first book, and how has that evolved or changed in the process of writing your third? Is it a shorter process?
It's kind of getting, for me, it's getting my hands around what is the story here, and once I get that, I can kind of rip through it in about 6 months. The first book, I did it in probably 6 or 8 months, the first draft, and then there's all the rewriting, which is and editing, and so I'd say about 6 to 8 months for a book.
And before we go, I'm so curious, your storyline, do you take it from news, or are you writing it out of whole cloth from your mind?
I'd say everything just, it's kind of like everything just filters in, and
wow.
And something will come to me. A plot will come to me, or more than a plot, a twist, like a story twist will come to me. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of have the end of the book first, and then I just write to that.
Oh, now that's an interesting tip. You have the ending first.
Yeah.
I've actually heard that good advice in other writing workshops.
Yeah.
Have your ending first, and then write to it.
Yeah,
and so
that's what I do.
Did you do that from the very beginning with your first book?
Yeah, it just happened. I didn't say I'm going to get the ending first. A story twist came to me, and I said, I think that'd be a good story, and that was the Charlestown connection.
And you won an award for that.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I got Best First Novel from the Next Generation Indie Book Awards down in New York, and it was great. Mary Beth and I went down there, and we had a great time. We stayed at the Plaza Hotel, and it was a nice weekend.
Well, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show today, Tom.
Thanks.
Please read The Revenge of Liam McGrew and his other books, On the Bridge and The Charlestown Connection. Fantastic writer. Look for him on tommacdonaldbooks.com. And it's great to know that your books are on sale at the Gift Garden here in Milton. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the
Thank
show.
you.
And we'll see you next time on It's All Right with Suzette.